I always had the sense that there was something strange about old Mr. Rogers' death. He was older, about 83 years old, and from the atmosphere at his funeral, it was evident that he lived a full life, even though he lived alone for most of his older days. He had friends, and I was one of his younger friends during his old days. Old Mr. Rogers was my neighbor, and he was a good neighbor. He concerned himself with the business of his plants. He maintained and grew a small batch of tomatoes in a bucket, which he grew with such tenderness and care. I would tease him sometimes about his plants, and he would simply laugh it off in his usual way. He loved his plants like he loved his family, and he never seemed to bother anyone, at least not that I knew of, because he lived alone, and I'd lived next door. He was not so springy, but he could carry himself just fine. Then he was dead. It was strange, but that was last month. It was strange for two reasons: how our apartment was old, and there hadn't been anyone else other than the three of us neighbors in the apartment, and all three of us lived alone. It was Matt who owned a cat, and that was the only thing he talked to and loved. Old Mr. Rogers, who owned the plants and gave all his affection and time to. Then there was me, the girl who loved my job because I didn't know what to do with my neighbors. The rest of my building, about the 3 apartments, were unoccupied. The first strange thing about the incident was that it was first labeled a murder. Matt was always quiet, but his cat had been quiet for a few days before Mr. Old Rogers' death, and I discovered that he had left a note in the mailbox that he would travel to his mom in the South, and it had been old Mr. Rogers and myself in the building. No one knew that, so Matt and I had been suspected, but I had an alibi and CCTV footage at work that cleared me off my charges. Matt's mom, as alibi, checked out from the South when she was reached. Then the police declared that there was no foul play, and it was ruled a suicide. The second strange thing was just how quickly the police turned it around, saying that he killed himself. He loved his plants too much. The case played my mind, and I'd often thought about it when I was at work at the local coffee shop and when I was home alone in the evening. Sometimes I would lay in bed and wonder why. There was no objective motives. We cannot understand why a person would kill. It's subjective, and until a killer is brought in, we cannot say why they did it. The sheriff said to me when they had been cleared, "It's like thunder. These things occur. It would be a shame if thunder struck at the same spot twice." I didn't think about the words too much during the day, but at night I had such vivid recollections of everything that occurred. I suffered the silence of the night to linger when I reminisced the sound of old Mr. Roger going about his day watering his tomatoes. Last night was one such night. The thought of old Mr. Rogers kept me up for significant parts of the night, and I stayed up on my phone as I thought about it more, almost conjuring the sweeping feeling of his presence in my mind, that I began to hear the pattern of foot drops in my head. I shrugged it off and continued on my phone. I tapped the screen, and it revealed that it was late at night. 2 a.m. God, I'll be damned. I scoffed, mentally distracted. Unmistakable foot drops. My body turned rigid, and my blood pumped cold, causing my heart to snap. The heat of my breath burned on my upper lip and my head banged. The cascading down of sensations made me numb for seconds, and in my hay numbness, I heard the noise marching ever more clearly. I rolled over on my bed as the noise moved closer. I had the better mind to run for the door, but I decided against it. My mind was so dizzy with thoughts, and I instinctively ducked underneath my bed when a key clicked into my door. I pressed my hand over my mouth, smothering the heaves of panic that escaped my lips. The pores of my face and body poured forth with release. I soaked up the sweat with my own dread as the door yawned open. The voice growled as it scanned the room to find my absence. He watched for a bit, hesitant to move further, and as though suddenly, the legs moved towards my bed with fury. It was a man I identified. Where could she have gone? He threw a tantrum briefly and stood up from the bed. Then he picked up himself with a throwing heave as he stepped back towards the door. He held it slightly ajar and started to laugh. "I know you're in this room. I can smell you," he said. My life dashed before my eyes, and the moment of horror made my stomach tighten. I felt the pressure of life around my throat, and I suffocated from fear. In the chaos of my mind, I tried to make sense of the voice, and when the first thought struck me, I gasped. "Gotcha." It was the sheriff. He turned away from the door and started to saunter towards me with a reckless fury. I had begun to whimper underneath the bed, scared for the worst to happen. I shut my eyes and said in a hurried prayer for help. My lips were still quivering when I heard a loud bang from the door. It was a noise so sharp it rocked the room. The gun clicked a second time and the bang rocked again. The sheriff fell onto the bed and his dead weight made the bed frame creak. I squealed. "Come out, Cindy. He's dead." The one who had shot him in the deep reverberating bass was the voice familiar to me. It was Matt. I called out for another bed, realizing myself that I had been snotty and sobbing. Matt had never spoken to me. "That was payback for killing my cat and Mr. Old Roger," Matt said as I crawled out from under the bed. Matt stepped into the bedroom. When he killed my cat, I was distraught. Then I saw him kill Mr. Old Roger. No one would believe them if I told them who killed Mr. Roger, but I knew you would believe me when he came for you. My name is Hector Abbott, and I live on the second floor of an old apartment block in Green Street, Soho, in downtown New York. I retired 2 years ago, and I'm now 62. I was a paratrooper in the military and keep myself fit by working out every day. I'm what one might classify as an ardent observer. I sit on my balcony, and it's like watching TV. In fact, I don't own a TV. The daily activities on Green Street keep me entertained. The other day, while purchasing some fresh bread rolls from Allison's Bakery, a block away on the opposite side of Green Street, I met the lovely young lady who owns and runs the small bakery carrying her name. The scent of freshly baked items wafted through the shop. I had seen her place, but had never gone inside. I don't miss much, and noticed a guy of around 30 doing window shopping outside the bakery, except there wasn't much in the window area but a small price list. He had blonde hair combed to one side, and a pair of faded blue jeans and a black leather jacket on. "Beautiful little business you have here," I remarked, keeping an eye on the tall, slender guy at the window. "Why, thank you, sir. Are you from around here?" Allison asked. "Yeah, the name's Hector Abbott, and I live in an apartment a block away," I responded, noticing the guy outside was staring at Allison. He quickly looked away when I turned to face him. "Well, because you're a new customer, you can have the bread rolls on the house, Mr. Abbott," Allison offered kindly with a friendly and warm smile. "That's very kind of you, Allison. I'll be sure to buy all my baked goodies from you from now on," I responded cheerfully. "Oh, wonderful. Thank you, sir," she added, all bright-eyed. I gave her a warm smile, but as I turned to leave, I noticed that guy who had been outside was now on the side of the street that I lived on, but still opposite the bakery. I crossed the road at an angle to walk back to my apartment, but kept a close vigil on him out of the corner of my eye. As I arrived at my apartment block, I saw him head back towards Allison's Bakery. I had a gut feeling that something was amiss with this guy, so I began walking back towards him. As he saw me, he turned, pulled the hood of his black jacket over his head, and walked away swiftly. I stood there for 10 minutes to make sure that he never came back. Allison was kind and a friendly young lady, and I cared about her safety. The next morning, I rose at my normal time of 4:30 a.m., made a cup of coffee, and, lighting a smoke, went to sit on my balcony. At about 5:30 a.m., I saw the same guy dressed the same about 2 blocks away on the bakery side of the road. Leaning against a wall with one leg propped up against it, he lit one cigarette after another, the whole while gazing around suspiciously. I knew he was waiting for Allison. I don't know how, but I just knew it. At around 6:30 a.m., I saw Allison in the distance, climbing off a bus and heading to her shop. The guy stood up straight and took out a book, pretending to read it. As Allison neared him, he lowered the book and remarked, "Beautiful morning for a beautiful lady." Being polite, Allison responded with dignity, "Thanks for the compliment. And what's your name?" "You can call me Frank, Allison," he said. "Mind if I walk you to the bakery?" Well, she felt awkward as he was a stranger. "Can't be careful enough in this part of town. There's some real wackos around." "Well, okay then," she replied so as not to offend him. As they walked, she felt uneasy as Frank kept eyeing her all over. When they reached the bakery, she said politely, "Thank you, Frank. You have a good day now." "Oh, I will, Allison. It started off well just walking next to you," he replied with a smirk before walking away. I put on some decent clothes and headed for Allison's bakery. As I did so, I thought I saw the guy suddenly sneak into the alley about 30 yards away. "Is that guy harassing you, Allison?" I asked, entering the shop. He wanted to walk me to the bakery. He said there's a lot of wackos around. I thought it was harmless enough, but he kept on staring at me. "I'll keep an eye on him for you." "I don't trust him," I replied. "He made me feel very uneasy," Mr. Abbott said. His name was Frank. "Don't fret, Allison. I got you covered," I said as I turned to leave. "Thank you, Mr. Abbott. I would appreciate it," she smiled. Sitting on my balcony close to Allison's 5 p.m. closing time, I noticed Frank crossing the road with his jacket hood on, but he headed towards the same alley I had seen him move into earlier. After locking up, as Allison moved to pass the alley, Frank stepped out, startling her. "You gave me a fright, Frank," she said as her palms became sweaty. "Ah, Allison, sorry about that. But remember, I'm not one of the wackos around here," he said with wide eyes and a snicker. "I'll walk you to your bus ride," he added. This was becoming too much. "I really don't need escorting, Frank, and I'd appreciate it if you left me the hell alone," she retorted angrily. "She doesn't recognize me or remember me," he thought as he walked away. I quickly moved downstairs. After Allison had walked about 100 yards, Frank began following her. I kept my distance and followed without being seen. As Allison's bus departed, she noticed Frank standing with his arms folded. He quickly pointed at her with a sick smile on his face, and then gestured with the peace sign. I approached him openly, but when he saw me, he rapidly made his way through the heavy traffic, and I lost him. At least Allison was on her way home safely. Frank continued his antics for another 4 days. I just couldn't pin him down, and Allison was a nervous wreck. We reported his activity to the police. I never oversleep, but the next morning I woke up with a startle. It was 7:30 a.m. I quickly moved to my balcony viewpoint. Allison's bakery was still closed, and neither her nor Frank were anywhere to be seen. I knew something was wrong. I got dressed quickly, skipped coffee, and went straight to the bakery. I tried the door. It wasn't locked, which was a big sign that something was seriously wrong. I entered quietly and looked around. No sign of anyone. Allison had a small kitchen at the back of her shop where she made tea and took her lunch breaks. I opened the door slowly and will never forget that sight. Allison was tied up and gagged. Her feet and hands were also tied together, and her eyes were wide with fear. She never made a sound, but moved her head and eyes as though trying to let me know that Frank was here too. Suddenly, I felt his presence. I turned around as he closed the door while facing us. He had a large butcher's knife in his right hand. "Old man," he said aggressively, "didn't your mom ever teach you to mind your own business?" He grunted as he began moving the knife between hands. I took the deceptive, helpless Tai Chi stance, ready to use my combat skills. "You're pathetic, old man," he laughed. "You look like an idiot." Allison was writhing and moaning with the gag in her mouth. Frank managed to move about 3 inches closer, and then he didn't have time to know what hit him. In a split second, the knife went flying. I busted his arm and tripped him over backwards with 1 foot behind his. It only took 15 seconds, and I'd beaten him senseless. He was bleeding from mouth, eyes, and nose. Writhing and crying out in agony, I said to him, "They'll teach you not to mess with a 62-year-old paratrooper, you piece of shit." Then I kicked him in the head, and he was out for the count. I removed Allison's gag and untied her. She gasped for air, but eventually her breathing steadied. Other than a few bruises from the tight ropes, she was unharmed. "Thank you, Mr. Abbott," she said repeatedly. "Where'd you learn to fight like that?" she asked. I just smiled. "Age is just a number, my friend. Let's call the cops." The police arrived promptly, and after questioning us, they had to carry the unconscious Frank to their van. Looking at me with my short gray hair, the 2 policemen couldn't believe that I was the one who had reduced a man, much younger than myself, to an unconscious mess on the floor. I checked in on Allison regularly after that, and we became close friends. A 62-year-old and a 25-year-old. Never again would Frank be stalking her. He was charged with severe harassment and attempted murder. Despite the event being extremely traumatic for Allison, news of the incident spread quickly and gained her twice as many customers. I still sit and observe from my viewpoint. When Frank Hansen was questioned by the police, they found out that he and Allison had been at school together. He confessed to being grossly overweight as a scholar, and despite Allison having quite a few boyfriends, she always rejected his advances. He held a grudge against her for 10 years, vowing that one day he would win her over. He worked out regularly and finally got the physique he thought would impress her. When she showed no interest in him yet again and didn't even recognize him, it was a snapping point for him. Unfortunately for him, his plan of raping and murdering Allison was foiled by a 62-year-old paratrooper. It was back in the summer of 1974, and I was 16 years old at the time. I had just attended a concert in the city with my friends Dave and John. The three of us were catching a train home. We had got off at our stop, and we began walking home down the main road, chatting about the concert and still buzzing from the cool vibes. It was around 12 a.m., and we were crossing at a main intersection. There wasn't much traffic around this time of night, and as we crossed the road, we suddenly noticed a beat-up brown-colored station wagon stop in the middle of the intersection right near us. His window was down, and the driver was around 25 to 30 years old, and although he looked a little dodgy, we just assumed he was going to ask for directions, and so we just stood there waiting to see what this guy wanted, completely unaware of the sheer terror that was about to follow. In that very moment, the guy pulled out a pistol from his lap, and what he uttered next still gives me shivers to this day. He said in a calm tone, "Who wants it first?" We just froze in absolute shock and terror, and it took a few seconds for all the reality of this to finally sink in. We didn't even have time to exchange a look, and we all hightailed it across the intersection. As our footsteps thundered across the road, the sound of gunshots filled the air as we ran for those bushes. I was absolutely terrified, waiting for a bullet to hit me or one of my friends in the back. As we ran further into the park and mustered up the courage to look back, we could no longer see the car and breathe a sigh of relief. We all just stood there trying to get our breath back. Luckily, we all knew the area pretty well, and we decided to continue along the old gravel road that we knew would take us back towards our homes. As we walked down the path, our conversation was pretty minimal as we were too preoccupied over the thoughts of what had just happened and how lucky we were. However, that feeling of relief didn't last very long. As we got near the end of the gravel road, I could make out a car at the very end, and I started to wonder to myself, could that be the guy? We kept walking, but then just like out of a scary movie, the car flicked on its headlights and started revving its engine and under the dim lights of the street. My heart began to sink as I then realized it was the brown station wagon. We knew he could see us. He was waiting for us, taunting us. He must know these streets well, and where each of the different roads would lead. Well, we didn't waste another second. We took off once again and jumped the fence of a neighboring house. We didn't stop. We just kept running and jumping all of the fences. I glanced toward the road many times, and I would see his car screaming past. Each time we made it to a main road, we would see his car appear again and once again speed towards us, and we dove over fences and tried to find another way. This happened about 2 or 3 more times after that. Around 1:30 a.m., we got down the end of another side road, and we couldn't see at the time, but the fence we jumped was covered in barbed wire, and it tore our clothes as we slid down. I let out a few groans as it grazed my arm. We were now in some kind of paddock-type area, and we could faintly hear the screeches of his tires racing around trying to find us. We just stood there crouching in the dark, breathing heavily, standing in calm manner, but we didn't care. We probably crouched for about 15 minutes or so, just waiting in the dark. Figuring by now he must be gone, we made our way back onto the main road. We kept our eyes peeled and kept glancing over our shoulders, and as the headlights appeared in the distance on many occasions, we each stopped breathing for a second, wondering in anticipation whether or not it was going to be the brown station wagon. We didn't see him again after that, and around 3 a.m., we walked my friend John home. Dave came back to mine for a bit so we could talk more calmly about our experience. Dave went home later that night. What was only meant to be a 20-minute walk home turned into a 2-hour terror trip that I will never forget. What was even more scary was a week or so later, I heard on the news that an elderly lady was shot by a random stranger one late night, not too far from where this happened. Whether it was the same guy or not, I'll never know. All I really know is that my friends and I were incredibly lucky to escape that night. My name's Emmett Tanner, and I'm now 43 years old. I joined the U.S. Marines at a young age and excelled in self-defense as a sniper. Due to my skills, I was chosen to be part of an elite, top-secret group for the security of various members of the state under then-President George H.W. Bush from January 1990 to November 1992. I received the rank of second lieutenant. My job mainly involved surveillance from buildings with a rifle, using high-tech sights and a pair of telescopic binoculars. During my service, I had to take 2 people out, who both attempted to assassinate 2 high-ranking officials. I enjoyed that job. It gave me a great thrill knowing that I had the lives of many in my hands, and my observation and sighting skills became second nature to me. I served for another 9 years after that until 2001. What I didn't realize at the time was that my skills would become an obsession. Today is the 30th of April, 2007, and I'm in jail for life, so to me, it's just another day. During my stint in the Marines, I was stationed in Houston. Our sleeping quarters consisted of 2 10-story buildings directly opposite one another, one for males and the other building quarters for female officers. I was on the 10th floor, in a room of my own on a corner of the building facing the women's dwelling. My night vision binoculars were so powerful that I could see a dime on the pavement 10 floors below. But I wasn't interested in looking at dimes. There were 4 women officers whom I found extremely enticing, and in a monochrome green night after night, I watched them undress and watch TV in skimpy nighties. One stood out from the rest. Captain Harlow Delaney was the sexiest of them all. On hot summer nights, she would sit in only her underwear and brush her beautiful long auburn hair, and she always came out of her shower into her living room completely naked, with a towel wrapped around her head. She never bothered to draw her curtains as nobody could see anything from our building, 150 yards away, except someone spying on her with a pair of binoculars. Someone like me. I didn't realize just how sick I was then and never considered myself a stalker. But this went on for 2 years. After so much time spent taking in her beauty, I wanted to have sex with Captain Delaney. One day, while everyone was going about their duties at our base camp about 2 miles away, I climbed the stairs in the woman's dorm, red roses in hand, and within seconds, had Miss Delaney's apartment door open. I inhaled her scent as I sprinkled rose petals all over her bed and trailed them to her door. I found some lipstick and wrote on her bathroom window, "You're just so hot, Captain Harlow Delaney." Then I took out a notepad and wrote her a letter. "I watch you every night, and you really turn me on. I know you want me, you just don't know how much you want me yet." I placed it on her coffee table. She had left her cell phone in her room, and so I took down her number. That evening, I waited with a bated breath for her to come home. She arrived at around 6 p.m., and I could see the shock on her face when she came into vision. No night sights needed. As I looked through the binoculars, she appeared to be staring straight at me. Shit, I cursed as I crouched down. Had she seen me? I thought as my heart raced. She couldn't have, I convinced myself. I had voice pitch lowering software on my cell. I activated it and then called her. "Captain Delaney," she answered, sounding shaken. "I hope you like your surprise, Lieutenant," I said, my 2-tone octaves lower. "Who the hell are you?" she shouted back. "A secret admirer, baby. Don't be angry. By the way, your scent fills your place, and it drives me wild," I responded. "Whoever you are, you're toast, you freak." "I'm calling security," she said angrily and firmly. "Ah, gee, why do you want to do that?" I asked. "Aren't you just touched that you have someone who can't resist you?" She quickly cut me off. I took another peek through the binoculars, and within 2 minutes, 2 male Marines and a fellow female officer had entered her apartment. Suddenly, someone knocked on my door. "Who the hell can that be?" I questioned. I hastily packed away my binoculars, expecting the worst. "Hey, Emmett, buddy, came the voice with a friendly smile as I opened the door. It was Arlo from down the hall. "Hey Arlo, what's up, bud?" I asked casually. I could see he wanted to come in, but I stood holding the door. "Just wanted to return your book, Emmett," he said, passing me my book called Criminals in Justice. "Some baddest people in there," he said, "particularly the stalkers," he added. "Thank goodness they're all caught." "They always get caught, bastards," he said as he turned to leave. "Yeah, bastards," I added. "See you around, bud." Sometimes you feel like you've been hit with a sledgehammer, and this was one of those times. The next morning before roll call at 8 a.m., I waited to one side until I spotted Captain Delaney. She was walking alone, so I approached her and saluted her. "Morning, Captain," I said smartly. "Morning, Lieutenant," she said with a smile, but she looked troubled. "What can I do for you, Emmett?" she asked. "I just wanted to say hi, Captain." "You're looking very smart today," I quipped. "Thank you, Emmett," she said, looking towards the ground. "Is something wrong, ma'am?" I asked. "Some madmen went into my room yesterday and spread rose petals all over the place. The intruder also wrote some sick, perverted letter and smeared some filth on my bathroom mirror with lipstick. That's dreadful, ma'am." "Some real sickos on the prowl," I said, acting concerned. "If there's anything I can do," I started. "Thank you, Emmett," she answered, "but I have some people on the case." Captain Delaney had referred to me as a madman and a pervert. I didn't take kindly to that at all. I smiled, saluted her, and lined up for roll call. As the day drew to a close, I waited behind a wall near the entrance to the ladies' apartment building and came out into the open as Captain Delaney arrived. It was already 7:15 p.m., and she was startled at seeing me. "Emmett, what are you doing here?" she asked. "Just making sure you get home safely, Captain, and that you don't have a repeat of yesterday," I responded in a concerned tone. "That's very kind of you, Emmett, but I've already told you I have people on the case," she said rather firmly. I was offended. A madman, a pervert, and now rejection of my offer to help. I went upstairs to my room and locked the door. I was about to teach Captain Harlow Delaney a lesson. I removed my sniper rifle from its case and assembled it together with its night sight and silencer. I very quickly had her in my crosshairs, but then she moved out of sight. Then I saw Major Ann Taylor appear, and they were close friends. They began chatting as I was becoming impatient. I had an opportunity as my crosshairs centered on Captain Delaney's forehead. Squeeze. I pulled the trigger. Simultaneously, Captain Delaney moved, and the bullet struck Major Taylor in her chest, killing her instantly. I think everyone in the area heard Captain Delaney scream. Damn. I sat under my breath. Forensic experts quickly traced the trajectory of the bullet to my room, and by the next morning, after checking that my rifle had been fired only 10 hours earlier, I was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment. I miss those exciting days. Perhaps I'll be out soon for good behavior. I was so excited to start a new life in the city. My girlfriend and I had just moved into a small apartment, and I was eager to explore a place that I'd never been before. I had gone to the grocery store to pick up a few things, and as I was walking home, I was texting my girlfriend about all the cool things I came across on the walk and all the fun stuff that there was for us to do together around the city. I was so preoccupied with my phone that I didn't even realize that I had gotten turned around. I don't know how I was stupid enough to not look where I was going, but I was just really excited to tell her about my day and everything I saw. After a while, I finally looked up and realized that I had no idea where I was. The streets were empty, and the buildings appeared to look abandoned with their doors and windows boarded up. It kind of looked like something out of an apocalyptic video game, The Last of Us. I was starting to feel uneasy and honestly a little scared. This looked like nothing of the area that I was just walking in not too long ago. I looked at my phone's map and started making my way back in the right direction. I was around 4 miles from home still, and it was getting dark. As I was walking, I saw an old car with a taxi sign on top. It was starting to rain, and the darkness was engulfing the streets around me. But I still hesitated for a second before getting in. It didn't look like an official taxi, and I'd seen way too many true crime shows to trust it. but I just wanted to get home, and the thought of being lost in this unfamiliar place was freaking me out way more than getting in the car. I knocked on the window and the driver rolled it down just a little crack, and it was enough for me to ask if he was able to take me where I needed to go. He didn't speak, just nodded a yes in my direction. He unlocked the doors, and I got in and told him to drop me off at the gas station near my apartment building, and I gave him the address. The driver started the engine, and we were off. I still had my Maps app open and glanced at it every so often to make sure that we were going in the right direction, only the further we drove, I noticed that we had started going in the opposite direction of my apartment. I started to get nervous and asked the driver if he could take me home or even just let me out so I could find another ride, but he didn't say a word and instead just kept driving. I started to feel panic set in as the car took me further away from my home. I demanded that the driver let me out, and he just sort of chuckled to himself. I tried to open the door, but it was locked and didn't have a button to unlock it. It was one of those locks where when the car is locked it retracts into the door, and you can't pull it up to unlock it, and I was trapped. I started to feel a cold sweat on my skin as the fear that I was feeling began to fill every inch of my body. The driver drove for what felt like forever, taking me deeper into the outskirts of the city down its darkest, deserted streets. In reality, we probably only drove for around 30 minutes, but the panic and fear that I was feeling in that car made every second feel like hours. The rain was coming down harder and harder, and I could feel the driver's eyes on me through the rear view mirror. It was watching me closely, and it was making me even more afraid. I was trapped in that taxi with a stranger who seemed to have no intention of letting me go. The fear and desperation was overwhelming, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't think of a way out. Eventually, the taxi pulled off to the side of the road, and the driver turned to look at me. He was wearing a black hoodie, and his face was littered with the trashiest tattoos I'd ever seen. I almost wanted to laugh for a second, and remembered where I was and decided that that wouldn't be the best idea. I could see a sort of creepy smirk on his face as he spoke to me in a harsh voice. "Welcome to your final destination," he said, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know what to do. I tried to reason with the driver to just let me go, and there'd be no harm done, but he wouldn't listen. He just laughed as he got out of the car and walked towards the back door. I didn't even know what to think. I had no idea what he was going to do with me. The driver opened the back door and dragged me out of the car by my jacket. He threw me into the gutter, and I hit the ground hard. I was in pain, but I was still alive. I tried to get up and run, but he was fast and caught me, tackling me to the ground. He put a knife to my throat, and I was on the verge of tears, and I tried to scream, but nothing came out. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice shaking, and the driver just laughed, saying, "Why not?" I was terrified, and I couldn't move. I could feel the cold metal of the knife against my skin. Finally, I was able to muster up a scream loud enough that somehow a group of people nearby were able to hear it. I heard footsteps coming from down the street, and thank God that they were getting closer. The man told me to shut up and press the knife harder against my skin. And just when I thought things were over for me, I heard a voice calling out in the distance, "Hey, what's going on here?" I looked down the street, and only about 50 feet away, a group of people were walking towards us. They were watching us, and I realized that the driver was beginning to get nervous. His hands began to shake, and he got off of me as fast as he could. He turned and ran away on foot, just leaving his car and me laying there on the street reeling from what had just happened. The group ran towards me, and one of the guys helped me up and put pressure on the wound that I didn't even notice that I had on my neck. They called the police, and an ambulance took me to the hospital. I needed a few stitches for the laceration of my throat, but was otherwise physically okay. The police searched the vehicle and realized that it was stolen, and there was nothing in it to tie it to the person who had done that to me that night. Now, years later, another man was abducted in the same manner in that area, only this time the man was caught and he was arrested. I was called in due to the correlation in the crime and was able to identify the man as the man who attacked me on that night, and thank God that he was charged and sentenced to 7 years in prison. He never admitted to kidnapping anyone else, but we knew that was probably not true. I tried my best to get over it, but the emotional scars will always be there along with the physical one on my neck. I'm so grateful to the people who saved me, and I'll never forget the fear and desperation that I felt in that taxi, but I'll also never forget the kindness and bravery of the strangers who risked their lives to help me and make sure that I was okay. From that day, I made sure to always pay attention to my surroundings and never let my guard down again. My name is Leo Trudeau, and I'm 52 years old. I have my own import-export company. I buy products from foreign countries to sell them here in the United States and the other way around as well. Being a businessman is also an addiction, to me at least. So I also like to buy and sell used items on the internet, not under my company, but simply on my own, as Leo, the common individual. I have several ads running on different online platforms. At one occasion, I was contacted by someone who was interested in a video game console that I was selling on Craigslist. An Atari Jaguar, mid-90s, a little bit of an underground system. It's definitely a collector's item these days. I was selling the console with the original box, plus a few games included, which made the price tag go up to $450. So I was happy to know that I was going to sell the Atari Jaguar. After exchanging a couple of emails with the person, Luke Lee, one phone call sealed the deal. I'm very excited about buying the Jaguar. From the pictures, I could say that it's in great condition and functioning properly as well. Since you were kind enough to display footage of the system working, being a retro video game collector, the fact that the full box is included makes a big difference, Luke said. Given the sound of his voice, it appeared that he was a young man, no older than 25 years old, give or take. He was, in fact, very talkative, asking me about old video games in general, but also 80s and 90s pop culture. I found him to be nice and somehow amusing as an individual, but I just wanted to get the business closed. And so we decided to meet the next day. He gave me his address. Luke told me that he didn't drive. That being the case, it made sense that I was taking the console and the games to his house. It was still a relatively big package, too big and still valuable enough for someone to carry it on foot or through public transportation. Less than 24 hours later, around 6 p.m., I arrived at Luke's house. It was a nice place on the suburbs. I assumed that he still lived with his parents, and that he probably didn't want them to know about their son spending almost $500 on a 90s video game console. Fine by me. I just wanted to get the money and make the kid happy with his Atari. As I parked the car, Luke immediately came out of his house, even before I called him. He was probably waiting at the window. He actually looked younger than 25 years old, but appearances can be misleading. Luke was wearing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle t-shirt, and he had short red hair and freckles. No signs of facial hair whatsoever, not even a shaved beard. He was wearing an enormous pair of glasses. He was smiling at me as if I was Santa Claus himself bringing a gift from his dreams. "Hello, Mr. Trudeau. I'm glad you're here," he said as we shook hands. "Hello, Luke." "Ah, so here it is. The good old Jaguar. I bet most of your friends never played Doom on the Jaguar." "For sure you'll impress them," I said, taking the package from my car's trunk. "Ah, I don't really have friends, to be honest. Would you mind bringing the console into my house and helping me set it up?" Luke asked. "Oh yeah, of course." No trouble at all," I replied, being sincere. Luke seemed to be happy with my answer. I followed him into the house. After getting in, I assumed Luke's parents were out on vacation because the house was a complete mess and smelled bad. I see you're home alone these days, Luke. But really, if you don't mind taking my friendly advice from a grown-up, try to clean up every once in a while. You never know, your parents may pop up by surprise," I said, trying to be nice and concerned even. "Oh, don't mind about that, Mr. Trudeau. I live here alone. My parents died a few years ago. Boat accident. They were never really there for me, but had tons of money, which I inherited, along with other things like the house. I guess I should hire a housekeeper then." "Thank you for the advice, Mr. Trudeau," Luke said with a childish smile on his lips, as we finally entered what I assumed was his gaming room. I set up the Atari Jaguar for him. Within a few minutes, the console was ready to be played. Thank you so much, Mr. Trudeau. Here's the money. By the way, before you go, won't you play with me for just 5 minutes or so? As I said, I don't really have any friends. No brothers or sisters or parents, Luke said. Feeling sorry for the kid, I said, sure, but only for a few minutes. I gotta go. By the way, how old are you, Luke? I asked. I just turned 17, he answered. After 20 minutes, I decided it was time to go. I had done my good deed for the day. I was sad for the kid, but I wasn't his father. But the kid himself had a different idea. Luke insisted he wanted to walk me to my car, and when I shook his hand and said goodbye, Luke asked, Mr. Trudeau, will you be my adoptive father? You don't need to support me or anything. Just visit me once or twice every week. Maybe spend the weekend now and then. We could do things together. Go out for dinner, movies, play video games together. Didn't you enjoy spending the last hour with me? Okay, now I was getting freaked out. I could see Luke's green eyes behind his glasses, looking at me with expectation. Listen, Luke, I think you should go and talk to someone. Therapy, maybe. For sure in school, someone can help you. I wish you all the best, but I'm not your father, kid, and you're 17 years old already. You'll be a grown-up man soon enough. It's time to grow up. But it's hard, but it'll be worth it. Take care, I said to Luke before driving back to my place. That same night, I woke up. My cell phone was ringing. It was Luke. The young man was clearly drunk or high and crying. He was begging me to become his adoptive father. My wife, Janice, was sleeping next to me, and she also woke up with Luke's sobbing screams. I terminated the phone call and explained to Janice what was happening. Unbelievable. You never know what kind of prank life is preparing, Janice said. I had to agree with her. Luke insisted and continued to harass me for the next few days. He even started calling me Dad. Alarmed, I was forced to call the authorities and get a lawyer. For now, this seems to have worked, but the situation is still very disturbing to me. I hope Luke leaves both me and my wife alone and gets the help he needs.